Informal, culturally responsive, and accessible assessments by Colton Solzer. So, why an assessment is important? It really drives a student's learning. They're able to understand what they're learning and why they're learning it. And if we can get that information in the assessment, having them use real life situations where they'll use this information, it helps them even more understand why they need to know this information. So many students ask, why do we need to know this? When are we going to use it? So if we can actually put that into our information and into the assessment, it really helps the student understand what's going on and why they need it. It also helps provide instructional guidance so that the teachers know exactly where we need to go. We don't want to teach off of just what we're testing about, but it does help make sure that we are in line and staying on the correct path as we go through the lessons that we are teaching. So the types and approaches to assessments, we want to make sure, if we can, to have the student participate in what they're going to be tested about, how they're going to be tested, and the best way to give them the feedback. If we can do that, we can really get that buy-in to the student and what they need to know when they are learning. If we have that buy-in from them, then they will participate more, they will understand it better, and they will understand why they're learning. So they may have different and better questions for understanding. It's also important that the teacher quality is determined by the student performance. So, if a teacher isn't performing well, then how are we supposed to expect the students to perform better? And then assessments that use critical thinking is also very important, as it helps the student really think about the question or what they need to do to get done what we need to get done. They need to, if they can use critical thinking to really get in to their minds and answer the questions with a deeper thought, then that's a whole new level of thinking that will help them, not just in the assessment for the class at the time, but later on in school and then further on in life. Really, as we test over a subject, we're preparing the students to think better and think differently for their future at college and work and beyond. So with formative versus summative assessments and evaluations can positively influence the teacher-student performance. So we want to make sure that even if a student doesn't do well on assessment, we understand why they didn't do well and then help them understand the information that they missed and find out why they didn't understand it. The formative, it really helps the summative not be a surprise as we go through. Again, we help reteach areas that the student needs a little more information or a little more clarification on, so that will help with the summative assessment. When that comes, the student can be confident in what they're doing. And then hands-on is always important. Any time we can do a hands-on formative or informative or summative assessment, that really helps the student think about, process, and do what they can to answer the questions correctly. Again, it goes on to that higher level of thinking. If they have something that they can actually physically work with, and they have that higher level of, they're able to reach that higher level of thinking, that will really help them understand the process better. With informal and formal assessments, so it really helps us as teachers understand what we need to reteach immediately. So the student isn't left hanging. They understand what they need to know and why they need to know it. And then it also helps us as teachers know if our teaching is effective or not. If it is, great, let's keep going with it. If it's not effective, then we need to know where we need to change. And it could be effective for some and ineffective for others. So that's another thing we need to know. And with informal assessments, that really does help us understand that process before it's too late. With standardized testing, that just really holds teachers accountable for what their students do and do not know. So again, that kind of assesses us as well as the students. That helps us understand, again, if we were able to work with our students and help them get the information they needed. And then informal assessments also help us build the relationships with our students that will help the student with their confidence when it comes to the formal assessment. When we build those relationships, it builds the student's confidence, which is really important when it comes to them taking an assessment, because they need to have that confidence they can do it. If they're second guessing themselves, it's going to show in the results. Even though they know the information, they second guess themselves, and that's going to show up. And so we need to make sure that they have the confidence to do as well as they can, and feel comfortable that if they don't know something, that they can ask and work through it afterwards, that it's not it's important, but it's also important for them to know that it's not a make or break situation in every situation. So with continuous and final assessments, it's really important that the continuous works with the students to reach a mastery level. As they continue on through, keep going back to the information that was taught, relate it to the information that is going to be taught. And it also helps prepare students for the final assessment as you keep going through the different information. And then the worth of the teacher being placed on the results of the student with the standardized tests will help the student know that they understand the final assessment, and that is vital, that they can go through and the final assessment and feel that confidence because they did so well going through the continuous assessments. And then with process versus product, we want to use our processes to make sure that we build those students up in that information. That's what's best for them, and learning about how the student works with our process, we can get a better product for the students, and the students will learn in the way that helps them and that they'll retain it with better information. The thing is students learn multiple ways, but we only tests only show a few. So that's one thing we need to make sure we take care of when we are in class and giving assessments, is that we give the students multiple ways to show what they know. And then as we teach students from different regions, we need to make sure that we are able to communicate that information so that the student can be successful. If we are only teaching one way and that student from a different region doesn't learn that way, we need to make sure that they understand what's going on so that they can get the same information and retain that information as we go. They can also ask questions, and they feel comfortable asking questions. With approaches to the assessment, knowing the students to create a culturally relevant assessment is super important. Again, if the student doesn't understand the question or the process, how are we to expect them to do the best they can? I mean, they can still do the best they can, but they may not understand what they're doing or why they're doing it. And that's also why we need to make sure we understand the well-being of our students, because with that process, well-being of our students and the pressure they're putting on themselves, we need to make sure that they're not putting too much pressure on themselves, which is causing them undue stress and anxiety. And then keep the material engaging. The more engaged, obviously, the more engaged we can keep the material, the better off the students are, and the more they are able to take from the material and ask questions and even help other students if the other students have questions. And then assessing, making the assessments to more real life situations. Like I said before, it just kind of helps the student understand why we are doing what we're doing, and they don't just blow it off as something that they'll never use or they don't need to worry about. When we put it in the real life situation, it's really important that they get to that so that they understand how they will use it. And then assessing the well-being of the teachers excuse me, is also very important, because we need to make sure that teachers are on the right track and doing what they need to do, and that they are feeling good about what they're doing, because students can really know when a teacher is uncomfortable or not confident. So we need to make sure that we assess the teacher's well-being as much as the students, because that is a really important factor that will last not just that particular chapter, but the school year and possibly the school career. We need to also make sure that we're setting that direction for the students. That's why it's so great at the beginning of a chapter or a lesson, is to make sure the students know what they are going to be learning about, so they know the direction they're going to be going with that. And it also, again, helps the teacher stay on the right path and not get too far off course if something else comes up. When we routinely engage and reflect with the students, again, it helps them understand, it helps them know that we as teachers care, with that building confidence, and then making sure that they feel comfortable and confident that they can talk to us, ask questions, that they feel safe. It's really important that they feel safe, and that if they don't do well, it's going to be okay, and we'll get them through that. And then helping the students improve where necessary, after an assessment. If a student, again, doesn't do well, helping that student improve in that area, so that we can move on and move up and forward instead of down and backwards with that student. It's very important. Here are my references.